Hi and welcome to this video series GMAT quantitative reasoning section preparation. So, your quantitative reasoning section has two types of questions, that is problem solving and data sufficiency. Data sufficiency has one question statement plus two statements that are given. So, you will have to check if the statements given are enough to answer your question or not, and basing on that, based on your options, you will select your answer option. Problem solving is your basic question with 5 answer options, out of which you will select one which suits it best. Today, we will be looking at data sufficiency on the topic of inequalities part 2. Let us begin. So, these are your answer options for your data sufficiency question. They are standard for any and every data sufficiency question. So, the answer option A says when statement alone is sufficient, but statement second is not alone is not sufficient to answer the question. Answer option B is when statement 2 alone is sufficient, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. And statement C is when both statements together are sufficient, but neither statement alone is sufficient. Answer option D is each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. And answer option E is when statements 1 and 2 together are also not sufficient to answer the question. So, let us begin with our questions. Let us see the first question. The first question here says, is mod of A greater than 8? First statement is A is greater than minus 8. For mod of A, that is mod of A, anything is distance from the point here it is 0, A minus 0. So, if mod of A has to be greater than 8, 8 should be greater than 8 or A should be less than minus 8. But first statement tells us that A is greater than minus 8. So, if it is say minus 7, then no, mod A is not greater than 8. But if it is say 9, because 9 is also greater than minus 8, then mod A is greater than 8. So, therefore, it can go either ways, therefore, it is insufficient to answer the given question. Now, option 2 says minus of 8 is less than minus of A is less than or minus of 8. So, we can multiply both sides by minus 1, then the sign reverses itself, the inequality sign reverses. So, if you are multiplying with a negative number, the less than inequality turns to greater than. So, A is greater than 8, multiplying both sides by minus 1. So, here you can say that yes, mod of A is greater than 8, because from here you can see that when mod of A is greater than 8, then A is greater than 8 for any number. You say take 9, 10, 11, any number, always yes, mod of A will be greater than 8. Therefore, this is sufficient to answer the question. Thus, statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, which comes out as answer option B. Let us move to the next question now. If x is an integer, is x even? X is between minus 1 and plus 1 inclusive. So, the first statement says x is inclusive greater than or equal to minus 1, less than or equal to 1. So, the options here you have for x being an integer are x can be minus 1, it can be 0 or it can be 1. So, there are 3 different options, therefore, you can, and here minus 1 and plus 1 are odd, whereas 0 is even. So, you cannot definitely say whether x is even or odd, therefore, statement 1 is insufficient to answer the question. Let us take statement number 2. This statement number 2 says that if x is a unit digit of a number, that number is divisible by both 5 and 10. For any number to be divisible by 10, the units digit must be 0. The units digit will be equal to 0. Therefore, x is the units digit, that is x will always be equals to 0, and it is an integer. So, you can say that 0 is even. So, x is definitely even. So, the answer is, the information given is sufficient to answer the question. So, answer is option B. Statement 2 is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 1 is not sufficient to answer the question. So, the answer option is B. Let us move to the next question now. What is the value of x if x cube is less than x square? Statement 1 says x is between 2 and minus 2. Okay. when you are saying that x cube is less than x square will always be a positive number. As long as x is not equals to 0, you can divide both sides by x square. X cube by x square is x and x square by x square will be 1. So, x is less than 1. Either way x will not be 0, because if it is 0 then x cube will be equal to 0, x cube will be equal to x square, therefore, x is not equal to 0 anyways, and here since it is not equal to 0 you can divide by x easily. So, x will be less than 1. So, statement 1 is telling us that minus 2 is less than x is less than 2. So, what does that mean? So, x can be anything from minus 2 to 2. So, can you find the value of x from that? We know that from the main statement, main question, that x will be less than 1. So, x can be anything between 1 and minus 2, any number. It can be minus 1, it can be minus half, it can be 0, no, it cannot be 0, it can be anything, it can be 1 by 3, it can be anything. So, therefore, this information is not sufficient to answer the question. So, let us look at statement 2. Statement 2 says x is an integer and it is greater than minus 2. If x is greater than minus 2 and it is an integer, we know that x is also less than 1. So, x is greater than minus 2, it is less than 1 and x cannot be equal to 0. So, therefore, only integer that is left with is x is equals to minus 1. So, therefore, you can say that there is one value for x, therefore, this information is sufficient to answer the question. Again, here statement 1 is insufficient on its own, but statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question. Therefore, answer is option B. We have seen 3 questions with same answer, option. Now, let us move to the next question now. Is k greater than t? Okay, they are asking us, the main question is asking us, is k greater than t? So, first statement is kt is equals to 24. Here it can be anything, k can be 1, t can be 24, then k is obviously less than t, but it can also be k can be 24 and t can be 1, then here the k is greater than t. So, we can definitely not say whether or not it is greater than t, therefore, it is, this answer option is insufficient to answer the question. Now, second option tells us, second statement says tells us that k square is greater than t square. So, if both are positive, if both k, t are positive, then k will be greater than t, but if k and t are negative, k will be less than t. So, depending on which sign k, t takes, they can be positive or negative, or one can be positive, one can be negative, then again the inequality changes accordingly. So, you can definitely not, by this alone you cannot say whether or not k is greater than t or whether it is less than t. We have both statements. Let us now check for both statements together. We have seen them both alone, but let us say together. If kt is equals to 24 and k square is greater than t square. So, let us say that k is equals to 1 and t is equals to 24, then k square is greater than t square. You cannot say that k square is greater than t square. So, k cannot be 1 and t cannot be 24, it has to be k is equals to 24 and t is equals to 1, then k square is greater than t square, yes. But so, for here you will say that k is also greater than t. But if k is equals to minus 24 and t is equals to minus 1, here again we can say that k square is greater than t square, definitely. Minus 24 whole square is same as 24 square, is greater than 1 minus 1 square, that is 1 square, but here k is less than t. So, even both together are also insufficient, they can be either they can go both ways, they are insufficient to answer whether k is greater than t or less than t. Therefore, answer option is E, when both together are also not sufficient to answer the question. Let us move to the next question now. If x is not equal to 0, is xy greater than 0? So, x is not equals to 0, xy whether it is greater than 0, the question is asking if the xy is greater than 0. So, the first option is x is greater than 0 and the second statement is 1 by x is less than y. So, if x is greater than 0, the first statement says x is greater than 0, but it has nothing about y. If y is also greater than 0, then x y will be greater than 0. If y is less than 0, x y will be less than 0. So, therefore, one alone is insufficient to answer the question. Now, if 1 by x is less than y, if x is positive, then you can multiply both sides and the inequality remains the same. So, x y will be greater than y. But if x is negative and you are multiplying both sides by x, x y will, the inequality sign will change and x y will be less than 1. So, therefore, if x is positive and if x is negative. So, again this is insufficient to answer your given question. Now, let us see both combined, 1 plus 2 combined, it is x is greater than 0 and 1 by x is less than y. If x is greater than 0, then definitely you can say that x y is greater than 1, because you are multiplying both sides a positive number, the inequality remains the same. So, if x y is greater than 1, definitely it is greater than 0 also. So, yes, you can answer the question. Therefore, this is sufficient to answer the question. Statement 1 alone is not sufficient, statement 2 alone is not sufficient, but statement 1 plus 2 together are sufficient to answer the question. The answer is option C. Let us move to the next question now. Is m greater than n? So, if is m greater than n? So, basically they are asking us if m minus n, taking n to the other side, is greater than 0. Okay, statement 1 is telling us that n minus m plus 2 is greater than 0. So, which if you take m minus n to the other side, you will have n minus m. So, if you take it to the other side, you will have m minus n is less than 2. The inequality remains the same, that this side will be lesser and that side will be greater, 2 is on the greater side. So, minus n is less than 2. So, here it can if it is say 1, then yes, m minus n will be greater than 0. But if you say that it is minus 1, since it can be any number less than 2, so m minus n is less than 0. So, therefore, to this statement is insufficient to answer the question. Now, the second statement tells us that n minus m minus 2 is greater than 0. So, you have m minus n, taking n minus m to this side, you have m minus n is less than minus 2. So, when it is less than minus 2, then definitely it will also be less than 0. So, you can definitely answer the question. So, m minus n is greater than 0, you can definitely answer it as no. So, therefore, this statement alone is sufficient. Mind you, you just need to answer the question, values do not need to match. So, if m minus n is not less than 0 is a definitive answer, definitely answer whether m minus n is greater than 0, so you can just say no. So, the statement 1 alone is not sufficient, but 2 alone is sufficient. So, the answer option is answer option B. Let us move to the next question now. If x is a positive integer less than 10 and is z less than the average of x and 10. X is a positive integer that is less than 10. And the first statement is telling us the difference between x minus z, the positive difference, that means the modulus of z minus x is greater than the positive difference of z and 10. So, z minus 10, it is greater than modulus of z minus 10. So, these modulus are nothing but distance. Positive integer x is less than 10. So, x is here and let us say 10 is here. It is said that x is positive and it is less than 10. And they are saying that z is such that z is closer, that is the distance from z is from x to z is greater than the distance of z from 10. So, this is the middle point between x and 10. Let us say this is x plus 10 by 2. So, they are asking us, they are telling us that z is more further away from x than it is from z. So, it can be anywhere in this area or it can all be anywhere in this area. So, it is always greater than the average. So, statement 1 is sufficient to answer the question. This we can say that z is not less than the average of x and 10, it is greater than the average of x and 10, to always be more further from z than it is from x than it is from 10. Now, second is z is equals to 5x. Let us say x is equals to 1, then z will be equal to 5. So, it is x is 1 and z is 5, it is closer to x than it is to 10. But if x is equals to 2 and z is equals to 10, then it is closer to 10 than it is to x. Therefore, it is insufficient to answer whether or not it will be, it can be closer to x or it can be closer to z, depending on what x is. So, option 1 is sufficient to answer the question, but option 2 is insufficient to answer the question. We can say that answer is option A. Let us move to the next question now. Is mod of x minus z greater than mod of x minus y? They are asking us whether the distance of x from z is greater than distance of x from y. The first option, they are telling us that mod of z is greater than mod of y. Looking at the number line, they are saying that the distance of z from the origin is greater than distance of y from the origin. So, distance of, let us say y is here, then z will be here, and if y is here in a negative side, z will be here. Distance of z is greater than distance of y from the origin. So, they are asking us, is x minus z greater than x minus y. So, you are given no information of x can lie in any of these areas. So, the distance of x from z and y can be either greater from z than y, or it can be greater from y to z. Nothing, no information about x is given. Therefore, this is insufficient to answer the question. Statement 1. Let us say statement 2. Statement 2 is saying that x is less than 0. X is less than 0. By only alone by this information, you cannot say for sure whether or not x, you know nothing about z and y. So, you cannot say for sure about distance of x and x from z or x from y. You cannot tell them anything. So, therefore, this is insufficient to answer the question. Statement 1 and 2 together, it says that z is greater than y, mod z is greater than mod y. So, it is either y is here and z is here, or y is here and z is here, and it is saying that x is less than 0. So, x can be anywhere on this number line on this side also. If it is in this area, then the x minus y, distance from y will be greater than distance of distance from z. But if it is in this area, distance from z will be greater than distance from y. Therefore, this also together also they are insufficient to answer the question whether or not mod of x minus z is greater than mod of x minus y. Therefore, answer option is E, when both statements together are also insufficient to answer the question. Let us move to the next question now. Is x closer to 30 than to 60? First statement tells us that 38 minus x is greater than x minus 32. So, 2x, taking x to this side, you have 2x is less than 38 plus 32 will be 70. So, x is less than 35. So, looking at the number line, you want whether or not x is closer to 30 or to 60, it is always less than 35. So, in this area the x will lie anywhere less than 35. So, definitely its distance from 30 will always be less than distance from 60. So, therefore, it is closer to 30 for sure. So, this option alone is sufficient to answer the question. Now, second option is mod of x minus 45 is less than 15. This is possible when x minus 45 is less than 15, but greater than minus 15. Adding 45 on three sides, you have x is greater than 30 is less than 60. So, if x is equals to 31, it lies in this region, but it is closer to 30. But if x is equals to 59, that is also lying in this region, but it is closer to 60. Therefore, you cannot definitely say whether or not which number, if it is closer to 30 or whether it is closer to 60. Therefore, this statement alone is insufficient to answer the question. Therefore, answer is option A, when statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 2 alone is insufficient to answer the question. So, those were some sample questions on the topic of inequalities part 2. Hope you understood them. Thank you for watching.